If Syracuse can just survive the first quarter, they may have a chance at an upset here.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, we are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts, whether you're watching Locked On Syracuse right now on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite audio platform. On today's show, 3 keys for Syracuse football to possibly upset SMU on Saturday. We'll discuss later on the show how Syracuse needs to stop the run in order to win this game. Pause for laughter. They're probably not going to stop the run. Also, SMU secondary, you heard it yesterday on Locked On Syracuse from Grayson Singleton. This SMU secondary is pretty weak, and Syracuse, they got to get their passing game going. Yes, I know they got a backup quarterback, but you know what? That backup quarterback is the quarterback for the rest of the season. Time for this passing game to get back to where it once was when Steve Angeli was the quarterback. Now Rickie Collins, of course. But the biggest key for Syracuse football to possibly pull off an upset on Saturday, they just have to survive the first quarter. All that and more here on today's edition of Locked On Syracuse. And before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Should also mention that later on in the show, I will be giving my official prediction for the game, which you may have heard on Wednesday. But I will be doing it once again later on in this episode, so stick around for that as well. It is unlikely that Syracuse football is going to go into SMU on Saturday and actually pull off a win. They are 16.5-point underdogs over on FanDuel. It's unlikely they pull off an upset. Let's just be real here right now. It's not exactly the greatest matchup here. For Syracuse, though, to have a chance at an upset, their biggest key is to just survive the first quarter. I've said this before, and I will continue to say this on Locked On Syracuse. I think one of the overused keys in any sport, and it doesn't even matter the level, is insert team has to get off to a good start. I think that's usually pretty generic. I think it's largely based on situation and the matchup. For example, I actually said on Locked On Syracuse ahead of the Clemson game that Syracuse does need to get off to a good start against Clemson. But that was more of a psyche thing with Clemson being at 1-2 and trying to bury them at 1-3. For this game, I'm not saying that Syracuse in the first quarter, they need to get off to a 10-0 lead or a 14-0 lead. Sure, it would be nice. I think we would certainly take Syracuse getting off to a good start, but they don't have to in order to win this game. They just need to survive the first quarter. Remember that SMU is coming off a bye. And at least last year when they were coming off a bye, they were one of the best teams in all of college football with Rhett Lashlee as their head coach. Whatever he's got going on over there, it worked last year coming off a bye. So I would expect that they're going to do largely the same things they did last year off a bye against Syracuse this time around. They were 3-0 last year when coming off a bye. That's a good start right there. You're 3-0. You're perfect coming off a bye. But more importantly, SMU got off to a fast start in every one of those games. They outscored their opponents in the first quarter coming off a bye 40-0. And so for my mathematicians out there, my math wizards that are watching and listening to this podcast, 48 divided by 3 equals 16. So on average, they led 16-0 at the end of the first quarter when they were coming off a bye. And Syracuse, look, to their credit, in the Fran Brown era, they have made some massive comebacks, unexpected comebacks. Last year, I think of Virginia Tech and Miami off the top of my head. Those were big-time comebacks. Even this year, Syracuse pulled off a big-time comeback late in the fourth quarter against UConn, trailing by double digits. They get the 50-yard touchdown of Justus Ross-Simmons. And then from then on, Syracuse essentially played a perfect game to close that against UConn, get that win. And of course, we know what happened after that, how they followed it up with a big-time win against Colgate. Yes, I know FCS opponent, but still, they were dominant in that one. And of course, they carried that momentum into Death Valley the following week, where they just bullied Clemson. We don't need to talk about what happened last week against Duke. Let's just pretend that game did not happen. So while Syracuse, to their credit, they have shown an ability to come back in games, even when you least expect it, not exactly the greatest recipe here, going on the road to try to upset SMU. I'm not going to sit here and say that Syracuse, again, that they need to get off to a 10-0 lead or anything like that, but they do need to stay in the game by the end of the first quarter. We'll go over this later on, how SMU has a really strong running game with TJ Harden and Chris Johnson Jr. They complement each other really, really well. So if SMU gets off to that fast start like they typically do after a bye week, they're going to be able to lean into that running game even more. And we know the Syracuse defense, and their rush defense specifically, is not very good. So falling behind 16-0 in this one, no bueno. At that point, you just have to pray for a miracle at that point. You cannot get off to a slow start against SMU. So overall, if I had to define surviving the first quarter, I will say that Syracuse needs to be within a touchdown. If they're within a touchdown at the end of the first quarter, I think at that point, they have a chance, because we know, again, I've repeated it so many times, that SMU typically gets off to fast starts after a bye week. If you can kind of curb them a little bit in that first quarter, well, all of a sudden, the game opens up for Syracuse. You can go look at how SMU did in quarters 2 through 4 after a bye, and you will notice a pretty significant drop-off after that first quarter. Typically, what they would do is they get off to a fast start, and they just survive the rest of the way. Well, if you can somehow curb that fast start that they usually get off to, who knows what happens in quarters 2 through 4. But if you're Syracuse, you give yourself a chance at pulling off this upset. Am I being delusional? Maybe. But comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you think Syracuse has a chance to pull off an upset on the road this Saturday against SMU? I'd love your thoughts in the comment section below. What's your biggest key for Syracuse to pull off an upset? Do you agree with me that it's surviving the first quarter, or is it something else? Love your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, coming up, SMU secondary, not very good. What does that mean? Syracuse needs to get their passing game going. We'll discuss that and more later on here on Locked On Syracuse. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action, or maybe it's just emotional insurance. Maybe you're betting against Syracuse, for example, just in case they lose. At least you can maybe make a little bit of money. And if they win, you don't really feel that bad that you lost money, because at the end of the day, you're a Syracuse fan first. I know I do this with the New York Jets, okay? So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. University on University Ave by Syracuse, of course. Salt City Coffee, great place to get your coffee, particularly on game days. I know when I was up in Syracuse, that's something that I used to do while I was there as a student a couple years ago. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. You may have heard me talk about SMU's secondary on Tuesday. You also may have heard Grayson Singleton, the host of Locked On SMU here on the Locked On Podcast Network, talk about the SMU secondary. And to put it very nicely, because I'm feeling nice, I'm in a good mood here on Locked On Syracuse, okay? I'm in a great mood. I mean, why not? It's a beautiful Thursday. Why not be in a great mood before Syracuse takes on SMU? So I'll be nice to SMU secondary, okay? They're not very good. Okay, they're not very good. That is me being nice. And it's one thing for me as the host of Locked On Syracuse saying that, because at the end of the day, my job is to follow Syracuse. So I'm watching every single second of the Syracuse game. Sometimes that means I cannot always check out what's going on with SMU, especially if they're playing at the same time or they're playing while I'm recording a podcast. So it's not easy to always catch every single SMU game. Well, guess what? That's why we have on Grayson Singleton on yesterday's crossover show, because he can give us that bigger or that better perspective of SMU. So take his word for it when he says that this SMU secondary is not very good and that SMU has been making a ton of adjustments and none of them seem to be working. Take his word for it that this SMU secondary is not very good, because Grayson, he is an expert, all things SMU. Trust me, this SMU secondary, not very good. The stats, they tell you exactly what it is, okay? The stats are not lying here with SMU's passing defense. It is the worst pass defense in the ACC, and it's not particularly close. Not close at all. They allow 334.5 pass yards allowed per game. Stanford is second last. They allow 315 yards per game through the air. And then Syracuse, they're third last in pass defense. Not very good for Syracuse, but that's 290.6 per game. So it's not close. They are so bad in that secondary defending the pass. But here's the catch with SMU. We actually talked about it a little bit on Tuesday, that they are pretty opportunistic. They will force turnovers. They have forced, I believe, 9 turnovers in their 4 games this season. So they're opportunistic. They will get their hands on the football, this defense, and they do stop the run. But really the catch is that SMU through 4 games has 11 sacks. So they have a very good pass rush down there at SMU. So what's the key? How can Syracuse get the passing game going? How can they? What do you think I'm going to say? Comment your thoughts in the comment section below here. The offensive line for Syracuse, they must be able to hold up in pass protection. And I've said this so many times, they don't have to hold up for 4 to 5 seconds. I'm not asking that from Syracuse. I'm not asking them to be the Great Wall of Dallas here. Can you hold up in pass protection for 2.5 seconds? That's it. 2.5 seconds. Slow down that SMU pass rush enough. And then it's on Rickie Collins to deliver on-time, accurate balls. That is the key then for Rickie Collins, because if the offensive line for Syracuse can hold up in pass protection and Rickie Collins can deliver on-time and accurate balls, if he can get it to the receivers, well, guess what? I would expect that Syracuse's receivers are going to find themselves pretty open throughout the afternoon and into the evening down there over at SMU. I would expect big days from Johntay Cook and Justus Ross-Simmons. Hopefully, Syracuse can also get Dan Villari more involved this week than he was last week against Duke. He only had 2 catches for 10 yards. So really, if you are Syracuse, this is setting up to a game where it could very easily be a shootout. And if we're being honest, that is the best case scenario for Syracuse. That is their best possible path to an upset. Get into a shootout. If you can get the offense going, take advantage of that poor secondary, you have a shot, right? Again, am I being nuts? Am I? Maybe I am, because until they can prove it with Rickie Collins, we don't know for sure. And last week against Duke was not exactly a big confidence booster heading into this one. But again, best case scenario for Syracuse to pull off an upset here is to get themselves in a shootout with SMU, because we'll talk about it in the next segment here, how, yeah, we would love to see Syracuse stop the run. That's probably not going to happen. Okay? Just being honest. Get yourself in a shootout by getting that passing game going against that weak SMU secondary. That's Syracuse's path to an upset. And of course, on top of, just surviving the first quarter. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you think that Syracuse can pull off an upset on Saturday against SMU? Coming up, I would love for Syracuse to stop the run, and we could talk about it next on Locked On Syracuse, even though it's very unlikely. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. College football is here, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, the prices, all of a sudden, they just jump at the checkout because of all those hidden fees. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you're going to pay. Honestly, Game Time, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Locked On Syracuse, I'm Jackson Holzer. 3 keys for Syracuse to pull off an upset. Number 1, survive the first quarter. We know that SMU is going to get off to a fast start in all likelihood. That's what they did last year coming off a bye. So Syracuse, they just have to stay within probably a touchdown in the first quarter. They give themselves a chance at an upset. Number 2, take advantage of that weak SMU secondary. Get that passing game going, which starts with the offensive line holding up in pass protection and Rickie Collins then delivering on time and accurate throws. Now we go to the defense for Syracuse football, which is very obviously the Achilles heel of this team. And why not just put this as a key? I mean, why not? Is it going to happen? Probably not, but it would be nice if Syracuse could stop the run. It would be nice. It's probably asking for too much, but, it would be pretty cool to see Syracuse go out there and hold SMU under 100 yards rushing, and their running backs under 4.5 yards per carry. Would be pretty cool. Probably not going to happen. I'd imagine that SMU is going to come out running the football, because the book is out with Syracuse. They cannot stop the run. They allow well over 170 rushing yards per game through 5 games. They allow nearly 5.5 yards per carry. It's not a good run defense. And I think from this point on, until Syracuse's defense can prove they can stop the run, we kind of have to assume that going into every game from here on out, teams are going to start by trying to run the football against Syracuse. That's what we have to assume from here on out. So, assuming that SMU comes out running, if Syracuse can at least hold the fort down in the first quarter, like we talked about in the opening segment, they give themselves a chance at an upset here. But really, it comes down to this with Syracuse. Can they stop the run without having to completely load the box? Can they do it? Because it's not like the Syracuse secondary, really the Syracuse pass defense, it's not all on the secondary, is that great either. They are, at the end of the day, the third worst pass defense in the conference. And I think a large part of that is because they don't generate much of a pass rush. But honestly, I don't have much faith in this Syracuse defense. I mean, how could I have much faith in this defense? Do you have faith in the Syracuse defense right now? I can put stop the run is a big key, try not to load the box, but there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. In fact, it probably won't happen. That's why I mentioned in the last segment that Syracuse, they need to get themselves in a shootout here with their passing game. But if they cannot stop the run at least early, and they get off to a slow start, not just survival, but a slow start, SMU is going to keep running the football. Syracuse is going to have no answer with stopping the run, and it could look very much like the Duke game last week, where they just have no answers on defense whatsoever, and there's no adjustment that they could honestly make to be able to stop the SMU offense. But I can dream, you can dream about Syracuse potentially being able to stop the run. We just have to hope, honestly, I think that Syracuse's offense can bail them out this week on Saturday, and that starts with Rickie Collins and the offensive line. So my prediction, you may have heard it already yesterday, but my prediction for Syracuse football in this game against SMU, I am picking SMU to win this game 35-24, but it'll be pretty encouraging to see that Syracuse at least can show a pulse on offense. They can actually move the ball down the field. They can actually score some points, but at the end of the day, they're just not going to be able to stop the run of SMU. And as a result, they're going to win the time of possession and ultimately beat Syracuse by double digits. I guess I have Syracuse covering, and for what it's worth, because I am picking SMU to win this game, I think that definitely increases Syracuse's chances of winning, okay? Because last week, I picked Syracuse to it was actually an upset against Duke. They were underdogs in that one. I picked Syracuse to beat Duke. Look what happened. I picked Syracuse to lose to Clemson. Look what happened. I picked Colgate to beat Syracuse. I'm just kidding. I did not pick Colgate to beat Syracuse, but you get the idea here. Call it a jinx, reverse jinx. But honestly, yeah, I think that SMU is going to beat Syracuse, and I hope to be wrong as a Syracuse fan and a Syracuse alum. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below, your official prediction for Syracuse against SMU. Now, as far as what's coming up here on Locked On Syracuse in the near future, of course, tomorrow is Friday, which means we got Poll Friday, updated regular season win prediction for Syracuse football ahead of this one against SMU. So it's a more holistic Poll Friday podcast because we're not just going to talk about the SMU game. We're going to talk about the whole season really in general. We might be able to do that Poll Friday again after the SMU game because it'll be the bye, and we got a whole bunch of topics that we can go over on Locked On Syracuse during the bye. But that's coming up tomorrow. Also tomorrow, on Locked On ACC. That's right. It won't be here on Locked On Syracuse. It'll be on Locked On ACC. I host a solo show over there. We'll talk about all things ACC, some of the big matchups coming up this weekend. That's going to be on Locked On ACC. Once again, be sure to check it out. Hit the like and subscribe button over there each and every Friday if you want to hear more from Syracuse very own Jackson Holzer. That is myself, of course. And then on Saturday, you got actual game day. Syracuse taking on SMU on the road at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. There will be a full post-game reaction podcast here on Locked On Syracuse. So to summarize everything for you, tomorrow we got Poll Friday here on Locked On Syracuse. Also tomorrow, Locked On ACC solo show. That'll be on Locked On ACC. And of course, on Saturday is game day, Syracuse SMU at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Full post-game reaction podcast on this channel of Locked On Syracuse. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson. former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. And if you really like this podcast, please, if you can just do me a quick favor here, hit that like button and just tell one or two of your closest Syracuse friends about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so this channel can grow, reach all Syracuse Orange fans, and of course, hit that subscribe button. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you all again soon.